Our organization has been helping folks uh, with disabilities, families that include someone with a disability, to become homeowners for almost 30 years now. And we've helped over 2,000 families to become first-time home buyers. So um, I haven't been around for 30 years with this organization, but we have a team of folks who are very experienced and have deep expertise in this arena to work with folks, and look forward to talking about this process with you today. Um, Home ownership, of course, has a number of benefits. Many of them are probably familiar to most people. But I think it's worth kind of touching on, and certainly thinking about households that include someone with a disability. We think about home ownership as a pathway to community integrated living. So the option for living in housing that's not segregated in any way, or housing that does not congregate people with disabilities in any way. So, of course, owning your own home in a community, first of all, provides that benefit. So community integrated living in itself offers a number of benefits, and we'll perhaps get into that a little bit more later in this session, or perhaps in a future session. Access in general to safe and high quality and affordable housing can help people achieve really important social determinants of health. Housing stability is proven to be very helpful for folks with disabilities in particular, because it provides benefits around health, and including mental health and well-being in general. Homeownership is also beneficial for all people in terms of helping to increase civic engagement and social engagement. It can help increase graduation rates and college attendance. I mentioned previously, it's an important social determinant of health, so it can help improve long-term health outcomes. And it can, of course, improve wealth and financial stability. It's even been shown to help decrease behavioral problems in children. So lots and lots of benefits to home ownership. For a long, long time, the emphasis has been placed on home ownership as a pathway out of poverty, and there's lots of evidence demonstrating that. But even beyond the financial benefits, homeownership can really help build a stronger and more resilient communities.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. My daughter, the two times that we had her in a more of a group home setting, or even when she was living with another family before she passed, it definitely, she was living her best life and really enjoying that. And it's nice to have that independence from parents. It goes both ways. It really does, because parents need the space and time too.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
becomes, I think, a good healthy balance for everybody. So that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. You shared some other things that I didn't even think about as well. So thank you
Sure.
for sharing that.
Yeah, and we have lots of, success stories, and one in particular that I'll mention very briefly. One of the founding parents of our organization was founded by a group of parents of children with disabilities. Um, his name was Andre. He passed just a couple of years ago, actually. And he lived in his own house in a neighborhood in Madison, Wisconsin. And it's not only beneficial to the person with disabilities, but I also want to stress, and this is something that our organization thinks about a lot, it's beneficial to the neighborhood. Andre was a person who had a lot to offer, and so it's not just that it's beneficial for the person with disabilities, but Andre was known to his neighbors, and the kids in the neighborhood knew him, and his neighbors knew and loved him, and so it's really beneficial for the whole community.
Absolutely agreed. I'm finding out more and more, like literally almost weekly, I'm meeting somebody who knew our daughter that we had no idea about, and it's so, you're absolutely right. It does go both ways, and integration into a community in general where people can, I don't know, sometimes maybe even be outside of their comfort zone. I think it's great. I think it's good for all of us to learn how to maneuver amongst one another. So, yeah, independence is a really great thing all the way around. So that leads me to my next question. What is housing counseling, and how can it help someone who is interested in becoming a homeowner?
Sure. So, housing counseling is one of those terms that gets thrown around a little bit loosely sometimes, and there are, probably many definitions for housing counseling. At our organization, we have worked with HUD, at the Federal Housing Agency, for the entirety of our history as an organization, and we are a HUD certified and HUD approved housing counseling agency. So what that means is that our housing counselors have been through rigorous training, and to achieve HUD certification, they have to pass a rigorous exam. And it's not uncommon for folks to have to take the exam multiple times before they're able to pass it. Our housing counselors were able to pass on their first attempt, which we're very proud of. But that certification helps that the housing counselors have formal training and deep expertise, and provide housing counseling under the HUD definition of housing counseling. So there's a more formal set of the types of services that are available. Our housing counselors provide information referrals free of charge to anyone who calls, any questions about housing. If we're not able to answer the question, typically we're able to refer folks to a different organization who can provide that information or support. Excuse me. And our housing counselors can also work closely with an individual or a family to help them determine, first of all, what are their housing goals, and put an individualized housing plan in place for them to work toward those goals, whether that's home ownership or whatever type of housing is appropriate in that particular situation. They'll help you create a housing plan to work toward those goals. They'll help you understand, what you need to have in place in order to prepare yourself for home ownership, if that's the goal. Our housing counselors can also provide counseling around financial literacy, financial wellness, if you will, and other categories of housing counseling. Our organization is also very involved in affordable rental housing, so we provide rental housing counseling as well. There are a number of different categories, but really what you want to look for is that HUD certification.
Mhm.
And then the housing counselors form part of a team to help folks through the entire home buying process, together with a real estate agent and a mortgage lender. Typically form a team to work with folks through the entire process, from getting prepared for home ownership all the way through to getting your keys.
So I do have a question, and there may not be a specific answer for this, but is there, is there a recommendation on when you should start investigating something? Like, because I'm sure it doesn't happen overnight. So like, do you recommend like, hey, we're starting to feel this way, maybe? So now's a good time because we're thinking in a year or 2 years, or is there any recommendation around that other than, pick up the phone and call us because it's not going to happen tomorrow kind of thing? Is there any kind of a
Right.
guideline around when you feel like it's a good time to start looking into this?
That's a really, really good question. Really the earlier, the better. Um, but certainly in today's housing market, it can sometimes take quite a long time
Right.
to find an affordable home for sale that meets your needs. And sometimes that process alone can sometimes take a year. If you are starting to think about this as a possibility, I would suggest contacting a housing counselor right away, and they can let you know based on your individual circumstances whether there's action steps that you can start taking now, or they may suggest that you check back. If it's very far out in the future, they may suggest that you take certain steps to learn more or think through what might be appropriate for you, and then check back with us when it's a little bit closer. But I would say anywhere from a year or two in advance of when you hope to be in your own home would be a good time to uh, contact a housing counselor. What you don't want to do really is be in the process and then contact a housing counselor. We can still help folks in that situation, but our options are more limited if that's the case, because we don't have the time to help folks access as many resources as we might otherwise if we are brought into the process once things are already in motion. Sometimes folks contact us when they already have an accepted offer, for example, and it's quite a scramble. We can sometimes still help people with down payment assistance, for example, but that can be quite a scramble, and sometimes it can impact the closing date and things like that, which can get kind of challenging.
Absolutely. Nobody wants more stress in an already stressful situation. So that
Right.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you for answering that.
Sure.
So what should I look for in a home buyer education program?
So home buyer education is part of the housing counseling process typically. When someone is thinking about purchasing their first home, and in some cases, other folks qualify as first time home buyers. In some cases, after a certain period of time after a divorce, for example, you might be considered eligible again as a first-time home buyer to qualify for certain housing assistance, like down payment assistance, that can make home ownership affordable. And homebuyer education is really learning even more detail about what the process involves in purchasing a home, as well as what's involved in being a homeowner, understanding all different aspects of the home buying process, as well as understanding things like insurance and maintenance and things like that. Um, there are, again, kind of like with housing counseling, there are lots of seminars and workshops out there. But if you are interested in homebuyer education as part of the process of purchasing an affordable home, and you're interested in down payment assistance, for example, many of the down payment assistance programs require completion of a homebuyer education program that meets very specific standards. And again, those standards come from the federal level through HUD. And there's also an organization called the National Industry Standards for Home Ownership Education and Counseling. And the home ownership program the home buyer education program, excuse me, that Movin Out offers is designed in compliance with those standards. So our home buyer education program meets those standards. It's very important to make sure that it covers the correct range of information, goes into enough detail on those different topics, and covers everything that you need to know, and make sure that you qualify for down payment assistance by completing that program and getting a certificate of completion. For the folks that we're talking with today in particular, our our organization recently launched an online homebuyer education program, and it is designed with accessibility first. So in our online program, it's self-paced course, and accessibility was really at the heart of designing this program rather than being an afterthought or meeting very minimum or basic accessibility standards. Our program is really designed for people with disabilities. There are standards available, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. Those are the kind of gold standard of website accessibility, and those are the guidelines that were applied in the design of our course. And so, for example, a user of our online course can select text-based or audiovisual material. Everything is closed captioned. It's fully accessible, and we worked with Independence First in Milwaukee to do some initial testing and get some really great input from folks with disabilities on the usability of our online course. And it's broken down into 4 sections. And so the affordability of the program is something that you want to look for as well. Some of the programs that meet those national industry standards can be a little costly. Our program is very affordable, and it's broken down into 4 sections that you can pay for individually, so it's even more affordable. So you want to look at, the price, but you also want to look at the quality of the content, make sure it meets those national standards, and make sure that it's accessible.
Wonderful, thank you. You've mentioned several times about down payment assistance. So how does down payment assistance work?
Down payment assistance is one of the primary ways to help folks with low incomes, like people with disabilities living on a fixed income, for example, to be able to afford to purchase their own home. And the way that it does that, the way it accomplishes affordability, is by providing a grant or a very low or zero interest deferred loan toward the down payment on the house. So that reduces the amount of the mortgage, and that makes the monthly mortgage payments more affordable. There are a number of different sources of down payment assistance funding that our organization administers, and there are other organizations across Wisconsin that provide other kinds of down payment assistance as well. And essentially, working with a housing counselor, there are typically income criteria. So you have to usually it's 80% of the area median income is the maximum threshold to qualify. And then different programs, different sources of down payment assistance may have other criteria. A number of the programs that we administer are specifically intended for households that include someone with a permanent disability of any kind. So meeting that disability criteria and meeting the household income criteria are the main requirements. Of course, in order to purchase a house, in order to get a mortgage, you have to be able to qualify to get a mortgage. And so, again, our housing counselors can help work with folks to understand that part of the process. But that's really the nutshell. It's fairly straightforward. There's a fairly simple application process. And again, working as a team with the mortgage lender and a realtor through the home purchasing process. And the down payment assistance comes in at closing through the title company and gets applied to the purchase of the home. So sometimes those amounts they can range anywhere from $5,000 or $6,000 up to sometimes $50,000 or more if we combine different funding sources. So that can make a huge difference for a family that's trying to purchase their first home.
Absolutely. Wow, that's fantastic. So how would someone get started on this path?
That's the easy part. Um, you can certainly, reach out to our organization. Our housing counselors can help folks figure out where their starting point is based on their individual circumstances. There's lots of information available out there online. You can certainly welcome to start on the Movin Out website, or give us a call. We have a form on our website that you can fill out. You can email us, you can call us, whatever works best for you. But really just thinking about, what kind of housing would best suit your needs. We work with folks with all different kinds of disabilities. Some of the people that we work with, for them, living in an apartment in a fairly large apartment building might be a great fit. They might be really social. They might like, living closely around other people. They might like that feeling of living in community like that. Um, Other folks that we work with, for them, maybe living outside of an urban area in a quieter, more isolated setting might make more sense. Some folks need to have access to mass transit, for example. You really need to think about your whole life and what your needs are for access to employment or education or shopping or healthcare or social activities, and how do you access those things, and all of those kinds of considerations that come into play when you're thinking about where do you want to live and what kind of housing would be best for you. But start thinking about some of those issues, and certainly reach out at any time to talk with any of our housing counselors.